right off the bat with this one from Trump. This was late yesterday afternoon. He declared fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction under a new executive order. And so we'll play this clip, and then I actually wrote up a little piece on this earlier today that maybe I'll source back to, but let's listen to his words here in this clip.
That's why today I'm taking one more step to protect Americans from the scourge of deadly fentanyl flooding into our country. With this historic executive order I will sign today, we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction, which is what it is. No bomb does what this is doing. 200 to 300,000 people die every year that we know of. So we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah, that they know of. And how many, the thing that gets me with fentanyl is now we have, so either way you look at it, pharma benefits because we also have naloxone, the Narcan kits.
Yes.
And so if it weren't for those nifty little inventions by the big pharma profiteers who obviously care so much about your health and well-being and not generating customers, I wonder how many more it would be at this point, because I hear repeatedly and perpetually kind of these incessant Narcan users who, carry these kits, and they actually look to overdose at this point because you can only get so much more high each time. And so the addicts are after their next fix, and they actually, if there's a the health units here locally anyway, they'll put out a warning, oh, there's an extra toxic pill or powder batch, thank you, yes, currently out on the streets. And the addicts will actually go and look for that one because it's more likely to cause them to overdose and get them higher than they were the last time. And now they have this fail-safe mechanism called Narcan or naloxone, whatever. And so these deaths would be, I would say, exponentially higher than they are if it weren't for that nifty little kit that everyone is urged to carry on their person these days. But this order basically empowers the federal agency, the feds, to treat this crisis. I would say with the urgency that it deserves and is much overdue, but also it will ramp up prosecutions, asset seizures, and military resources to combat things like cartels and these foreign suppliers. And Trump says it point blank there, like no bomb does what this is doing on the streets. And it's arguably worse in the United States than it is here in Canada. But here we've had at least and over 50,000 Canadians have died since 2016, with fentanyl being the largest source of those overdose deaths. And something that I say is not often reported on is the fact that this is disproportionately affecting young men who make up 3/4 of all of these fatalities, and then adults aged 30 to 39 represent more than 1/4 of these deaths, and that's according to Canada's own stats. And so we're not talking about how much this crisis is impacting young men primarily. And that is such a disservice. And then, of course, here in Canada, the tariffs were a direct result of Trump saying, hey, Canada has a fentanyl crisis. It's coming into our borders, and I'm threatening to impose duties and tariffs onto Canada if they don't get this under wraps. And so what did Canada do? I mean, for a long time, they did nothing. But then eventually, then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, in February of this year, he appointed former RCMP Deputy Commissioner Kevin Brosseau, the czar. We have a fentanyl czar. And, he's pretty much just had a bunch of conversations. There's been a few busts at the border, and they've broken up maybe one or two of the super labs in British Columbia. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot that's been done to curb this flow of deadly illicit drugs in the streets. And then after months of really kind of just silence, Boisseau came out in October and admitted that the crisis was much larger and bigger than he had anticipated. So, like, isn't that just a breath of reassurance for all of us here?
Right. It bears mentioning that Kevin Brosseau came from like Fisheries and Oceans, or one of those agencies, and that he worked on the development of digital ID. So he went from
Hmm.
digital ID into the fentanyl czar, who was then overwhelmed with how big the fentanyl problem is. And what's really concerning for Canadians with Donald Trump naming fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction is that British Columbia in particular is going to feel the full brunt of this, because the United States government is going to throw everything they can at this problem, acknowledging that it is a massive issue. As a matter of fact, this is one of the issues that we talked about in our conversation this morning with Premier Scott Moe of Saskatchewan. Everybody is acknowledging that fentanyl is a massive issue in our society, that far too many people have died because of it, and that we have to get a handle on it. Do I think that the government of Canada is going to be able to get a handle on the problem that they created? Absolutely not. And as a matter of fact, if I was David Eby sitting in BC right now, I'd be real worried about how the Americans are going to fix this, because the vast majority of fentanyl coming into Canada is coming into BC ports. So that puts Donald Trump and the US government and the province of BC at direct odds. Of direct odds. You guys have had more than enough time to figure this out. Like, you guys are the ones that thought that safe supply was a good idea to keep people addicted, to keep people in a cycle of poverty, addiction, violence, homelessness, all of the things that go with addictions. And now you're saying that you guys are the ones to fix it? Baloney. Absolute baloney.
Yeah, worth mentioning that since 2017, the Liberals have committed over $1 billion to this idea of decriminalization and safer, right? It has to have that R on the end. It's not safe, it's safer supply of these highly addictive, highly deadly
Replacement
synthetic,
drugs. Yes,
yeah,
replacement
synthetic
drugs.
opioids. And as Trump mentions also, that this just 2 milligrams, which is equivalent to 10 to 15 grains of table salt, can kill someone. And I would say even less than that if you don't have any tolerance at all, because there's a threshold there. And, I hear it on the streets when I'm out reporting, because
Sure.
it's a massive crisis here where I live. And I know that this is just kind of a microcosm of what's happening in the broader context of Canada and obviously the United States. But like the grains of salt can kill, especially a child, right? Because you have a lot of these addicts that are going out and using in parks, in playgrounds, in public restrooms. Here in
Mhm.
Coburg, we had security guards who were hired to man a warming room in the basement of a church who inhaled fentanyl after someone was smoking it in the bathroom and had to be hospitalized. There was
You're
a police
kidding.
officer just this past summer. They still don't, the mechanism of conduct hasn't been fully disclosed, but I suspect they touched the person that they were
Sure.
arresting had fentanyl somehow on their skin or their paraphernalia. And the officer had to be taken to the hospital after. And so imagine what that would do to a child who came into contact with
Sure.
these substances at a park, at a playground, at a the library seems to be kind of like a congregation space for people to
Sure.
gather and use drugs in the washroom there. And I mean, a library is where children go to find books like Buck the Magic or Buck the Rainbow Unicorn.
Yes.
And now parents have to be aware that, hey, you don't know what you're going into when you go into a public restroom at your public library these days. So this is a massive problem, and it's affecting, the drug user advocates is what they're called because they refuse to call them addicts. They say, oh, well, we all have the right to use drugs and are most vulnerable of society. And I say, you know what? I think that we need to get back to the language where children and the elderly are the most vulnerable members of society, not people
Agreed.
who perpetuate and continue to make horrible life choices. This is
Agreed.
ridiculous.
Absolutely agreed. No, they deserve protection. People that are feeding an addiction cannot be trusted to make good decisions, and that's just the way that these things go. When you're consumed by an addiction, you'll do anything to feed that addiction. And what these people need is compassionate care. We got to get the butterfly nets out. We got to trap them in a butterfly net and drag them kicking and screaming off to treatment. Listen,
Yes.
give them the choice. I'm okay giving them the choice. You can either choose jail, okay, for your criminal activity, or you can choose treatment, in-person treatment. It's up to you, but you're not staying here. This is how we're going to get this, and this is how we're going to get these people back, because we can't forget that every single addict in Canada that has fallen down this slippery slope is somebody's son, is somebody's daughter, is somebody's mother or father, and these are people that have value and have the capacity to have a really, really good life if only they could get out of their addictive behaviors. And treatment is the only way to do that. This is humanizing them. I think we have to, and we also have to stigmatize drug use again. Like, no, fentanyl is bad, heroin is bad, cocaine is bad. Okay, we're not this wide embrasure of something. Whether it's proposed as like a party drug or a street drug or whatever, all of them are bad. All of them are bad. And we need to get back to that too.
That's what I keep saying. Bring back that early 90s ad where the person's cracking an egg over a hot frying pan. This is your brain on drugs. It's literally just scrambled eggs. Don't do drugs. Yeah, that prevention, those pillars of actual harm reduction, which we seem to have just forgotten about, which is actually stigmatizing, shaming, and getting ahead of that curve by directing children and young adults, hey, just don't do drugs.
I'm a big fan of bullying. Okay, I think we
I'm
should
a big
bring
fan of
bullying
shame.
back. Yep. No, we got a public shaming in the town square. I'm a big fan of that. We should bring a lot
Shame
of our
actually
problems.
works.
Societal shame actually does. We should be doing. Good thing we do a lot of that on this program.
That's right. But you know what actually also works is getting people out of poverty and not
Oh, no
facilitating a
question.
mental health crisis by locking everyone inside their doors and closing all of their businesses for the better part of 2.5, 3 years. And so when the government, well, you can see the data shows that when COVID hit, the opioid use, I mean, every use, alcohol,
Everything.
obesity, all of any sort of
Coping
addictive,
mechanisms.
all of these
Self-medicating.
coping, it
Trying to get away.
all skyrocketed.
Trying to get away from life that really felt out of control at the time. And so we are dealing with the natural and predictable fallout of those decisions in seeing these drug usage stats in Canada, and that our government is giving it away for free.
Well, and when
It's
the
kind of
government tells you
unconscionable.
that they
It's
care,
unconscionable.
I'm
Yeah.
like, but you caused it. So make it make sense.